Welcome to Why Not Me? I'm your host, Mike Jackson, and today's guest is one of the great basketball players of all time. You know him as Blake Griffin. I know him as Blake Griffin. He's fantastic, he's cool, he's funny, and he's got lots to say. I'm super excited to share our conversation with you all today. I hope you enjoy it. Blake's gonna drop some dimes. Let's go. What's up, Blake?
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm awesome. Thanks for agreeing to do the Why Not Me podcast.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So I don't think we talked about this because it felt like a discovery to me. You were born March 16th.
Yes.
I'm March 12th.
Oh wow, didn't know that.
So we are sensitive Pisces with big dreams.
Yeah. You know me, man. Just a sensitive little boy.
Feel all the feels, man.
Yeah.
And happy belated birthday.
Thank you, man. Same to you. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
We didn't cover that.
Thank you. All right, so let's just jump in. You know, I love to start with origin story. And you know, when we spoke a few weeks ago, when we were hanging out, we actually were talking a lot about our roots and where we're from and our environment. So you were born in Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
It was just you and your brother and your parents. So tell me a little bit about Oklahoma City and just like that environment, growing up, you know, as a biracial kid. Just give me a little bit of a feel for that.
Yeah. I mean, my parents, both public school teachers, they met teaching at the same high school. My dad's black, my mom's white. And it was never like a thing that I even really thought about until you got old enough to understand what other people were saying. But my parents were just kind of like, they were just like rise above type people. Like they would never give anybody the time of day if they said anything, or one of them heard a comment about another. You know, I remember my mom, as we got older, I remember talking to her about like, did you ever hear anything? And she was like, yeah, oh yeah, people would say things not about my dad, but just about different races in general, not understanding that she was married to a black man. And
Right.
we never really knew any of that growing up. The one incident that my brother and I talk about a lot is we were in like a 7-Eleven with my dad. It was like always our thing on the way home. We'd stop and he'd get it. He was like the candy man. He like let us eat candy. My mom didn't. So we stopped at 7-Eleven, and one time this cashier was like, hey, are you guys okay? And we were like, yeah, what do you mean?
We just want a Snickers bar, bro.
Yeah. He's like, is that your dad back there? Or who do you know that guy back there? And we were like, yeah, it's our dad. And he was like, okay. And I remember like I was so young, I think my brother understood a little bit better, but I was so young, I was like, well, that guy's weird. But there was not a ton of that. And like I said, my parents did such a good job of just stepping over it, not even acknowledging it, giving the time of day. That I think that's kind of how we were raised. And it sort of took till we were older, which was nice because we were sort of able to handle that a little bit better. Once you get to high school, you kind of understand the ins and the outs. But my childhood was full of sports. Academics were super important. Obviously, my parents being teachers, we had to make good grades to play sports, and that's all we cared about. So grades came first. I was homeschooled till sixth grade. So like that early education was like my foundation, and my mom quit her job teaching to homeschool my brother and I, and we loved it because we got to get our schoolwork done in 3-4 hours, and we'd be outside playing. All the neighborhood kids would come home, and we'd play outside the rest of the day and do it all over again the next day. So I have zero complaints about my childhood, zero complaints about any of that. It was great.
And your older brother was a couple years older than you?
He's 3 years older, but he ended up just being 2 grades older. So we got to play 2 years in high school together, 2 years in college together. We got drafted the same year because he was graduating. I stayed 2 years in college, so we got drafted the same year. And, to this day, he's my best friend, and we work together now. And, he's that person. Even when I was young, he was like that person I was always chasing, to try to keep up with him. And I still do to this day.
I love that. I have, I'm raising a bunch of kids, and I hope my 2 boys are 15 months apart, and I often dream about like that same scenario where they're like best friends throughout their lives, and they always know that like there's that person they can lean on no matter how fucked up their shit gets. Like that person will always be there for them.
it can get a little rocky when you're young and everything's so competitive. Like
Yeah.
there was a time where we fought every day. We'd play some game, make up some game, whatever it was, and I would always lose. So I would just start fighting. But that was like the competitive thing that it helped grow our relationship. But at the same time, my mom probably drove my mom crazy a little bit.
I can imagine. I mean, the competitive nature of siblings, especially, the level that you guys were kind of competing at once you got to college in the pros, I believe you had the better pro career. Was that ever any tension, or did you ultimately could feel his happiness for your success?
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, we were so competitive early on and then high school even, but then once he left to go to college, he got a bunch of college scholarship offers. He was a number one player in the state. He was 4.0. He was Mr. This, Mr. that. So growing up, I was always Taylor's younger brother. At first, we were Tommy Griffin's kids. My dad was if I do say so myself, like a legendary high school basketball coach in Oklahoma. He's won 15 plus state championships, and we were Tommy Griffin's kids growing up. And everywhere we'd go, you Tommy Griffin's kids, Tommy Griffin's kids. And then I became Taylor Griffin's brother. And then once he left, I finally got to kind of step into, and it was never a thing I cared about, but that was just like who I was known as. And I finally got to sort of step into my own place. And once he left for college, it was just always, even before that, he always looked out for me, helped me, we worked out together, but there's not an ounce of jealousy in him. There's not an ounce of any of that. He was always like my biggest fan, and he was always a person that I went to kind of, when I messed up, he would call me and he'd be like, you fucked up. And I'd be like, God,
you're right. You're right.
You're right. Yeah. But it's stuff I needed to hear. You know what I mean? Like he was the one person who was always going to tell me what I needed to hear, not just like, it's okay. He'd be like, come on, be better.
Be better. Yeah.
And not just like little mistakes on the court, like,
real life
mistakes.
Shit.
Yeah. Real stuff.
So he goes to college, and now you have your junior and senior years ahead of you. You had a killer junior year. I think, were you player of the year as a junior? Did I read that?
It was player of the year as a junior.
So was that, like going into your junior year, seeing your brother go off to school, was that when you were like, I mean, obviously you knew you were good at basketball, but like, was that a moment, like a why not me moment, when you're like, I actually can fucking follow my brother's footsteps to college and maybe beyond, or were you already thinking that stuff?
I was already hoping for that. I sort of had this thing where like the guys who just were like predetermined, like they just knew they were going to be great. There's always like that little bit of self-doubt that I think is healthy, where you don't expect things, you have to earn it. So I kind of always had that a little bit, like I wouldn't say insecurity, not when it came to sports, but it was just like that thing of like, dude, I watched so many guys growing up, my dad being a high school basketball coach, like I watched guys who I was like, man, this guy is it. Like he's got it. And he never made it. Like he would go to college, he'd get kicked out, or something would happen, an injury, whatever it was. I watched so many talented guys from the time I could walk or remember what was going on, not make it, that I knew that was always a possibility. It wasn't a foregone conclusion that you were just going to make it.
Right.
So those 2 years, without my brother being there were huge for me, because it was a time to step up into like a leadership role. And I didn't want to break that we had won a state championship my freshman year, sophomore year. My brother was the best player in the state. And
was your dad the coach of your team?
Yeah, we played for my dad. So my dad started, he was obviously a longtime coach. He was coaching at like one of the worst inner city schools in Oklahoma. And my mom, I remember going to his games, and he would have like the, campus chief of police, whoever the head of security at the campus, that he would meet us at the car. He would walk us in. It was the type of school where you come into a basketball game, there are metal detectors, there's police in front of the student sections. Like it was not, nobody was going to mess with us because we were Tommy Griffin's family, but it was like, it was a crazy environment. And once my brother and I got old enough, my parents made the decision for my dad to switch schools, and he went to a private Christian school, so that my brother and I could go there. Great education, all that. And so he went there, we followed him. I went in 7th grade, so I had a couple of years before I started actually playing for my dad. But yeah, I played for him all 4 years of high school.
High school. That's so cool though to be able to like. I mean, literally all in the family, and like, my dad played ball in high school. Obviously not to your level, but I would like to pretend that I did since I went to Kobe's high school. I lie a lot.
You did. Yeah, you did.
But my dad was the guy, like the old black guy in the prissy white school with like a cane, like acting older than he is, waving it. That's my boy, and all that shit. Like the notion of like playing for your dad and like him being that integral in like your development is so awesome. I just think that's super cool. So obviously high school worked out.
It did.
And was there ever a doubt in your mind that you were going to go to Oklahoma? Did you ever? I mean, I'm sure you got recruited by a ton of schools. Like, what schools were recruiting you besides Oklahoma?
There was a decent amount of schools. My top 5, 6 schools that I put together. I really liked Kansas a lot growing up, and that was one I thought I was going to go to. I really liked Florida. That was when they were like really. They had like Al Horford, Joakim Noah. They won 2 national championships back to back.
Billy Donovan was coaching them?
Billy Donovan. I loved Florida a lot. I had Duke and North Carolina on my list, and there was a couple other schools that I liked. My brother being at Oklahoma, he committed to a guy named Kelvin Sampson who's at Houston now. So we played for him his freshman year, and then Kelvin Sampson got into some NCAA recruiting trouble after my brother's freshman year. He left to go to Indiana. And so my brother was just kind of like, I don't know who's going to come in. A guy named Jeff Capel got the job. Jeff Capel played
for Duke, right?
Yeah, played at Duke.
Was he coaching at Stanford before that, or am I making that up?
He was at VCU before that.
VCU, okay.
Yeah. So he came over from VCU. He was like one of the youngest Division I head coaches in the NCAA. And my brother spent probably like a month or two, doing the spring workouts. And he came home one night and he was like, hey, I just love everything he's doing. Coach Capel's father was an assistant coach in the NBA. He was like, it's great, man. We're doing like all kind of stuff like skill development, like stuff that I think is way better for, if you want to keep playing. A lot of times, especially back then, like college programs, even today a little bit, but they can't be so much now, but they were so like you come into the program, you do exactly what's asked. We're only letting you have like the ceiling that we will allow you to have. And there wasn't as much skill development. And so Taylor came home and we were having dinner one night and he was like, I mean, if you wanted to come to Oklahoma, like I think it's a good place, but there was never any pressure from anybody in my family to go there. And I had a great relationship with Jeff Capel, still to this day do, and felt like that was a place where like he believed in me. And we talked every day about it, and I eventually committed, I think like in June or something like that before my senior year.
I think that's really awesome. So obviously you had an incredible career at Oklahoma. Played your first 2 years, your freshman and sophomore year. I think player of the year, your sophomore year. And I mean, it's pretty fucking cool. Number 1 draft pick, right? Like that happened?
Yeah. I freshman year, I had a solid freshman year and had a chance to enter the draft. And there was just something like that I felt I was missing. I didn't know quite what it was. And I decided to like make the commitment to come back my sophomore year. And I remember I sat with one of our assistant coaches and I put together a board of like the goals I wanted to accomplish next season. And winning a championship was first on the list. Player of the year, Big 12 champions. There was like a whole list. And at the end was number 1 pick. And we ticked off every single one except for the national championship. But when I decided to come back, my brother and I went out to San Francisco and he worked out this trainer for 2 months, had zero money. So it was like 6 days a week. We would do basketball in the morning for a couple hours, have a little time off. We would go do strength and conditioning stuff, and then we would come back at night and do basketball for 2 straight months. And that like set me up for success my sophomore year because that type of like regimen for 60 straight days basically was what got me into like the best shape and really like mentally challenged me to know that like any workout in front of me I can do if I was doing that for basically 60 days.
I mean, you're already playing like a pro. You're preparing like a pro. You're getting that pro mentality at that point, which is really, I'm sure, invaluable. Yeah. So first pick, Clippers. Can you just run me through like I'm assuming you get the call, like you're at the table in the room. I don't know if it's the garden, wherever the draft was, but like you and the hype is already kind of telling folks you're probably going to be the first round pick. So partly expected, but like it's never real until it's real. Just can you tell me like that feeling when you heard your name? Because I dream about it still as a 52-year-old man.
Dude, don't give up on your dream, man.
Hey, man, I'm going to San Fran after this call to start training.
There you go. Just 2 months there and you'll be ready.
I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, it was like being they have these mock drafts all season long my sophomore year, and it was fortunate to be number one from beginning to end, and then the draft lottery happened. So, you figure out what team is getting what pick, and the Clippers came out and they're like, we're taking Blake. And it was kind of like a little bit of weight off your shoulders, but exactly like you said, to your point, is like, it's not real until it's real. Yeah. And that night was like, it was a little bit, it was not weird, but it was sort of mixed feelings because my brother and I were there together, right? And he was going to get drafted. We just didn't know where. So once I did my thing, and then how the draft works is you go up on stage, you shake the hands, you walk off, you do a little ESPN interview, and then you go in the back and you are like 2 straight hours. You're just interview, photo shoot, interview, like just going through the ringer, right? So I remember just like that being a whirlwind, and then I finished, and then I was like, I can't believe I forgot to keep checking what happened with my brother, and luckily I came out of there, and my family and I had moved to like off the floor to like a little suite in Madison Square Garden, and 15 minutes later, my brother got drafted. So it was like a whirlwind, but it was also like the best of both worlds. Couldn't imagine like a scenario better for our family collectively.
I mean, I guess I was going to say your parents, and obviously your dad is your coach. I mean, that moment must have just been like so exhilarating and so cool. And
yeah, my dad is a man of very few words. I mean, he's like very intimidating. He's one of those guys that like all the guys in my school terrified of him. But you'd like walk by his office. I'd like walk by going to class or something. There'd be like 6 girls. He'd always have like a candy thing out. 6 girls in there just like gossiping about like what's going on in school with my dad. I'm like, how is this working? He's like the nicest person ever. I see it. But all these kids, I can see how he'd be intimidating, but everybody loved him, and he's, just like a man of few words when it comes to stuff like that. But it was a special moment for our family, for sure.
That's incredible. So now you're in the league, and you're not just in the league in like, Dallas. You're like in LA. Instant like fame, and a fame of a different level. Ton of pressure, I'm assuming, on yourself to like number one pick, major market. How is that transition for you, dealing with that pressure?
It was interesting, man, because you're very right. Like it was such a different experience, Oklahoma to LA is, if you've ever been to Oklahoma, you know,
I'm meaning to go. I'm going to go one day.
Yeah. Right after you hit San Francisco.
Right after San Francisco. Exactly.
So, you're still like, you're 19 years old. You're trying to just keep your head above water. My last preseason game before what would have been my rookie year, I get hurt. Don't get to play my entire rookie year, or what should have been my rookie year. And so like that doubt, like creeps in, and you're like, oh man, I've heard the stories. The Clippers at the time were supposed to be cursed. Like none of their number one picks ever panned out. Their most recent one, Michael Olowokandi, played like a year and a half or something. And
that was not good.
Yeah. So not only was that in the back of my mind, but just being hurt, you don't feel full strength. You don't know if you're ever going to get back to that. There's a lot of doubt. So that, like, in a weird way, like, obviously you never want to get hurt, but it sort of curbed my transition, right? Like felt like I was on this like upward trajectory, but getting hurt, not being able to play was kind of like, oh, number one pick, had a great summer league, get hurt. And then you kind of feel like you're not talked about, people sort of forget. So it sort of helped me find my roots in LA and learn how to sort of live on my own. I'm not in college anymore. I'm out in LA for the first time, but I was so focused on rehab, practice, everything I was supposed to do, that it sort of helped me it was like a year of just sort of getting the lay of the land and understanding how things worked. And I learned how to work in that environment, that it made that transition from Oklahoma to LA a little bit more manageable, at least for me. And then, once I got healthy, it was, just take off from there.
Everyone in the league, and I always hear these Kobe stories.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, two-parter. One, like earlier in your career, even maybe that first year when you weren't playing, like, I don't know if you had contact with him, obviously different teams, but I hear you, like, guys of your caliber, he likes to kind of fuck with them initially, but like also like big brother them. Did you hear from him that rookie year? And if not, when did he, or was he ever a part of your life in any way? Like, was a mentor or just a guy to call?
Yeah, so sort of twofold in that when I got hurt, I had surgery by a guy named Neil Elatrosh, who did a decent amount of Kobe surgeries. I think most of them. And then the physical therapist who he uses was also the guy that Kobe used. So I remember being in the PT clinic. It's right down. It's basically in between the Clippers practice facility and the Lakers practice facility. So I was in there one day, and I remember kind of just sitting there. If you've ever done rehab for anything, the first like hour is kind of ice and heat, and you're just sitting on a table. You're kind of minding your own business. And I remember one day I was kind of sitting there, and I remember like something like I kind of looked up and I was looking at the physical therapist, like the clinic, and I was like, did something happen? Like it just got kind of like quiet, or like everybody kind of stopped talking. And I turned around, and Kobe was standing at the entrance. And he was talking to somebody, and I was like, oh, that's why. Like everybody, it felt like, like the president walked into the room, and everybody's like, oh, okay, yeah. And he comes and sits down on the table, and we start talking. And then, for the next, I was in there for, unfortunately, like the next 5 months or so. And he wasn't in there as much as I was because he was playing, but he would come in there before practice to do whatever work with his physical therapist. She was great. And we'd sit there and we'd talk about anything and everything. And it was just like a time where he wasn't really like, it was a mentor session, but it was more just like us hanging out, talking basketball. I would ask him questions about everything, and he was great, man. He would sit there and just download all types of wisdom. And then from there, I still hadn't played though. And I think you really earn Kobe's respect by the way you play. And I've told this story once or twice, but I remember, you have that moment where you're like, man, like, are me and Kobe boys? Like, we might be best friends. I don't know. And, the first game I played against him the next year, I'm setting like a pin down screen. So he's, for my man, and he's guarding my teammate. So they're running off, and when he kind of comes off this screen, he kind of gives you like a little like check. Not like he's not punching you, but he's getting you. He gives you a little check, like in the stomach or something,
like that Pal Gasol run through.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, something like that. Maybe a little less blatant, but it was like one of those ones where I'm sitting on the screen. I feel like all the air come out of my chest. I'm like, all right, I thought we were boys. Yeah, we're not. I guess we're not. But it was like, his way of testing people to see like if they were going to back down the next time, if they were going to stand up to him, if they were going to try to fight him. And I think the wrong thing obviously is back down. The next wrong thing is trying to fight, because now he knows he's got you. If you can piss somebody off to the point where they want to fight during a basketball game, that's, so you've obviously mentally you've lost that war. So the next time I set one, I stepped into it a little bit more. He didn't do anything. And then from then on, nothing else. But I love that. Like there was nothing dirty about it. It was just like basketball is a physical game. People might not see it, but it's a physical game. And especially like, I hate being that guy who was like back in my day, but
yeah,
back then it was a little bit different. This is 2010.
Yeah.
The game has changed so much. Every year there's new rules that are put into like a little bit less contact, a little more freedom for the offensive player. But those two things were like a great view into who Kobe was as a competitor and as a person. Like he will sit there and he'll talk to you and he'll be just as cool as anybody else. But once the game starts, all that's out.
It's a war. It's a war. Yeah. I went to Lower Merion High School where he played. So I've loved his career since he was a kid. And, you always as you know, we always follow the stories and listen to the interviews. So I'm always curious about like his impact on players as they come into the league and on and off the court, whatever that was. So
I mean, I have one more that I've told before as well, but we were playing, it was Team USA 2012 before the London Olympics. And we come in, at the time I was fortunate enough to be selected to be on the Olympic team. And they always bring in younger guys. So like on this team was like Kyrie, Paul George, Gordon Hayward. I'm kind of blanking on some of the other guys, but those were like the good young guys, you know, they're
John
2
Wall,
years
probably.
in. Yeah, John was on that squad. There were some other guys, but I remember like day 2, you know, they'd always bring the younger guys and we'd scrimmage them at the end. And I remember day 2 being like, man, like Gordon Hayward, who wasn't quite Gordon Hayward that Eddie was at his peak, and also Paul George, great players, obviously, but they're younger. They weren't ready for,
Right.
You know, to be like the faces of the league like they became. And neither was I, but I was fortunate enough to be on the other side. And I remember watching like Paul George and Gordon Hayward get bucket after bucket on Kobe. And I was like thinking to myself, like I wouldn't ever say this to anybody else, but I was thinking to myself, like, man, did he lose a step? Like, is this it? And the next morning, you know, I would go in and work out early before, in the weight room before practice started. And I remember watching Kobe walk through the weight room with his like 2 security guards, his trainer, and they're like full sweat. And then his they do a couple of things. His trainer comes over, and I was like, hey, where'd you guys go work out? And he was like, Kobe had us go do a 60-mile bike ride at like 3 a.m.
Jesus.
So they were getting back from a bike ride because it was the only time he could really ride a bike where it wasn't, you know, insanely hot. Yeah, and that as well. Both of those. And he was like, yeah, we've done it like every morning. And I was like, oh, that's okay. That's why he doesn't look as good in practice, because he doesn't give a shit about this practice. He's like building his mental fitness level up to be able to go. So that's a story I loved. It's just like the practice or the goal right now is not as important as the goal long term, and he was a master at that.
I remember there were stories about him when we were at Lower Merion, where, you know, homeroom at Lower Merion started at like 7:30, 7:45 in the morning. And then when he was like a high school kid, he would be at the park at the end of my block, actually, putting up shots before homeroom as a high school kid. And it was like, what the fuck is wrong? Like, this kid is insane. But like, you know, now that's the standard. Every athlete you see today across all sports talk about Mamba mentality and, you know, doing that extra thing. And it's like he normalized hard work in a way if you want to be a champion. And that's just evidenced by your story, man. He's the best.
Yeah. I mean, he made it cool. Michael Jordan's breakfast club that he would do, he would bring certain players and they would work out in the morning. The Kobe stories, like those all had like a profound effect on, like you said, generations of athletes. It had a huge effect on me. And when I was in high school, we played Tuesdays, Fridays. So Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, I would wake up at 6. I would go to like a local gym it was like $5 a month. I would lift for 30 minutes and I would like shoot for 30 minutes and I would go home, shower, and go to class. And I did that because those guys did that, you know, so those the impact that they have, you know, far beyond just the guys who were playing at the time. It'll keep going.
100%. All right. So you're in the league, a few years in now. Like, what would you say your highlight with the Clippers was? Like, this the ultimate NBA moment for you?
Man, I mean, I was there for 9 years. We had like a lot of amazing runs and never the ultimate success. But my rookie year, I remember we played against the Knicks at home, and Amari Stoudemire just got to the Knicks, and he was like playing at MVP level. And it was the first like 40-point game that I had, and I had 44, and I had like these 3 dunks that sort of like lived on. And I remember like coming home after that, and this is when Twitter was like getting going. It's probably like the height of Twitter, pre-Instagram. And I just remember like that moment being like the moment that like I came home from that game, and the next morning I woke up and it was like my life from that point on has never really slowed down. You know what I mean? That was like sort of like the launching point. But beyond that, like just each year growing and playoffs, There's multiple highlights. I mean, we like I said, we didn't ultimately get to the final goal, but my time in LA was special. I enjoyed
great
it.
teams. There's some great
Yeah.
teams while you were there.
Yeah.
And you were there for the whole, not to get controversial, but you were there for the whole, but here we go.
That's fine.
Let's fucking get it. The Donald Sterling shit. You were there for all of that. What was that? I mean, we saw what we saw from the outside looking in, and obviously there were team meetings, and I think Doc was the coach then, and he let you guys kind of make your own decisions, and you came out. And like, what was it like protesting the owner, and what was the vibe like? Ultimately, the guy who writes your checks is this blatant racist. Like, how did you? And were you? I'm assuming you weren't surprised when it came out. Like, I'm assuming there were signs before, and
yeah, no, definitely not surprised. I mean, I remember. To rewind a second, like when the Clippers were saying that they were going to draft me first, I remember one day my mom called me and she was like, "Hey, did you know about the owner of the Clippers?" You know, like being from Oklahoma, like there's no league pass back then, right? Like the Clippers were like, you didn't see them.
Yeah, they
didn't play on national TV.
Yeah,
they didn't play on national TV. They had that good year. But I, being from Oklahoma, you don't know much about the owners of the LA Clippers, right? And she called me and she's like a little bit concerned, and I knew about all the lawsuits and racial discrimination and stuff, and he was an interesting cat, man. He was he was definitely different. But when that whole thing happened, I remember the night before we were playing the Warriors in the playoffs, and we had just gone up there. We had won Game 3 at the Warriors' place. So Friday night we get like a text, team meeting, 10 o'clock ballroom. So we go down there and Doc's like, "Hey, apparently TMZ got a hold of some recording, blah, 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 Donald Sterling. We don't know what it is. Business as usual. So we don't know what the effect is going to be." So the next morning I wake up and, this is West Coast. So probably wake up at 8 a.m. and I have like 170 texts.
Yeah, I bet.
And it is just everywhere. And then the team group chat starts going like, what the fuck is this? Like, da, da, da. And as you can imagine, dude, I got texts from like Jesse Jackson, people I didn't even have in my phone that were like, you guys gotta protest, can't play, it's bigger than da 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 da.
And you're one of the leaders of the team, you and CP, CP.
Yeah,
so it's like you guys really have to step out in front of it.
Yeah, we come together and we're like, dude, we worked this hard and we got to this point in the playoffs. We never put our hands in. We're never like, all right, Donald Sterling on 3. Like, we're not doing this for him. Yes, right. He writes our checks. And some owners are so great that they are a part of the family, but it never really felt like he was. You know what I mean? And people were asking us to protest. And the NBA I think they were very scared that we were going to protest. And so we're like, no, fuck that. We're playing. Like, we didn't do all this just to get here and then we protest, it's a loss. We're losing that series. You
Which wouldn't be fair to you guys.
The NBA is not going to be like, all right, well, we'll give you one game.
We'll give you one pardon.
yeah. So we come out, we had the idea. I can't remember whose idea it was, but we had the idea to turn our warm-ups inside out. So it was just blank, And so we run out on the court. You have to wear the NBA, that you have to wear a jacket out, your like warm-up jacket. So we run out, take the jackets off, throw them in center court, and we got our warm-ups turned inside out. Lose that game, come back home. Staples Center has never been packed 30 minutes before a game. LA is a late arriving crowd.
Yep.
We run out, crowd goes nuts. Everybody's wearing black. They blacked out all their banners, Clipper banners. Mm-hmm. So like our protest, it became like the protest. It was like, hey, we're still going to play, but we're not going to. Right. We're not gonna rep the brand. And eventually won that series, but like that emotional like roller coaster of that series was nuts.
It had nothing to do with you guys at first. Like, you had nothing to do in the creation of it, but you guys had to be the face of it. And it's just like, you guys handle that so well, man. A lot of fucking pressure.
It was interesting. It was crazy, but ultimately, like, it led to good things. I mean, he clearly wasn't the person who should own an NBA team, and there's a high standard of people who own NBA teams, and it ultimately led to a new regime, which was great.
Ballmer's great. He's been really good for the franchise, so definitely positive direction. One more basketball question, we'll move on. I mean, your dunks were fucking nasty, bro. Like,
Thank
you've
you,
had
man.
some
Appreciate it.
nasty fucking dunks, bro. Like,
Appreciate it.
is there like a favorite all-time Blake Griffin dunk?
There's a few. I mean, I talked about that Knicks game. One of my favorites, was against Oklahoma City one year. Kendrick Perkins, who was known just like, he fouled the shit out of you. He was a hard-nosed defender. Wasn't super mobile, but if you got a step on him, you expect a forearm coming in, like you were gonna get hit. And I caught him one time where he kind of went body to body, and I kind of just had to throw the ball in, like my fingers barely grazed the rim, and that was one because anytime like somebody that's like known for being a defender, anytime you catch a big man, especially like dunking on a guard is cool, but dunking on a big man is it's like the ultimate challenge, right? So
Especially when Big's in their nickname, right?
Yeah,
dunking on Big
exactly.
Perk.
Big Perk. Yeah, exactly. There's been a few, but that's one that always sticks out to me.
Cool. We talked about being fathers before, and then that gives you such purpose when you think about your kids, and obviously you and your brother's relationship with your dad. So you saw what a good father looked like growing up. What does being a father mean to you ultimately?
Everything, man. It changes like your perspective because when you're playing basketball and you're trying to play at a high level and you have a bad game, like you come home and you're just sitting with your thoughts and you're pissed at yourself. You're thinking the game plays over and over in your head and you're thinking about all your mistakes. And then once you have a kid, my son's 10 now, my daughter's 7. You come home and or just after the game, you go out in the hallway and you see your son there, you see your daughter there. Everything just kind of resets. You know what I mean? You get it's like a built-in distraction, but it's also like a built-in moment that grounds you and makes you realize what's important. So, I hope that I became a better person, a better man when I had kids, just because. It keeps things into perspective, but it's a blessing, man. And it helped me become a better player for sure because I was able to compartmentalize what's really important.
That's interesting.
And when you do that, you're able to focus on what's most important instead of focusing on stuff that like you have no control of. Like sitting and thinking about all the times I messed up. Sure, it can help you get better, but you go watch film for that. You see it, you move on. You digest it, you move on. And my kids definitely helped me do that of prioritizing what's most important.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. Are they athletes?
They are. My son is like, he's, like I said, he's 10 and he's like in it. Like he gets sports. He loves sports. He's super into basketball, he plays flag football. He started playing lacrosse, but he's a good little athlete. And I love that he has joy when he plays basketball. I mean, when he plays sports, and watching like that joy of like not all the extra stuff is coming with it. You're just, this weekend he's basketball, lacrosse, and flag football games. Like, you know what I mean? He's just one thing to another, move on, do the next thing, and just has someone. And then after his football game at 5:00 last night, we're playing like 6 flags up with his friends for like 30 minutes after the game. I'm like, aren't you tired?
They got
So
all
you
that
want to
energy,
go home,
bro.
Yeah. But it's fun, man. It keeps me young, and I get nervous for his games more than I ever got for mine.
That was my next question. You're like pretty much trying not to miss games, like driving them to the games, doing the whole thing, right? Like,
yeah, and like you're also like he wants to, he really like enjoys sports, and he wants to, especially when it comes to basketball. Like, that's the sport I can help him in, and I'm always talking to him about the thing I love about him is he's a great teammate. He's always happy for his teammates. He looks out for them. He's trying to make other kids better, which I think is a great sign of a teammate. But I'm always talking about little things here and there, and it's a weird thing because you're trying to, even as a parent, right? You have all this knowledge, and you're trying to bestow it on your kids. You're always trying to make your kid's life a little bit better than yours was, even if yours was great, right? You're always trying to make improvements. And it's always a weird thing, especially when it comes to sports, like how much do you give him and how much is he able to like grasp these things that you're telling? And it's the same balance that I have in life with him. But it's sports is fun because it's, especially basketball. Like I said, it's one of those things where like there's one thing in life I know, it's basketball, and it's fun to watch him. Like, you tell him something and you see him try to do it, and then
That's fucking cool.
those things grow. And it's just like, again, I keep bringing it back to life, but it's just like life. You tell him something and you watch him do it, and you're like, oh, he's got it, or she's got it, whatever it is.
Do they know? Like, I mean, they know you as dad and they know you played the game, but do they know the levels that you got to as a professional athlete? Do you think they feel that, like, oh shit, like that, like that's Blake Griffin's kid?
Yeah, I think they feel that. They feel that. They always notice, we'll be sitting somewhere or we walking somewhere, and they're always like looking around. They always know, like, that guy's going to come ask you for a picture, or like, hey, those kids, and it's funny. I don't like that they do it, but it is funny that they're aware of it and they like sort of clock it. But a lot of times when I'm with my kids, unless it's a kid that comes up, a lot of times when I'm with my kids, like, I try to give my everything to that time. And, sometimes in those situations, I'll be like, hey man, I'm sorry, I'm hanging with my kids today. I'm really sorry, but great to meet you, and try to keep it moving, just because, like, my time with them, has been like limited. 9 months out of the season, I'm all over the place.
Yeah.
So I've missed, a good amount of stuff. So then when we do have our time together, especially now, as they've gotten older, I try to compartmentalize that and prioritize my time with them.
Gotcha. So are you retired?
Yeah, officially retired.
How do you feel about it? Are you I mean, obviously it's a decision you made, but you're really comfortable with it, I guess? And
and I made the decision a while ago. I had a feeling last year was going to be my last year, but I still wanted to give it some time, and I kind of kept it open. And I had a couple offers to go play places, and had a chance to go back to Boston.
I heard about that.
I called Brad Stevens, like sort of into December, and I was like, hey, like, I know I'm done. Like, I had 9 surgeries in my career. I've it's been a long, it's 14 years of like just like absolute wreckage to your body. 2 years in college, and then all the years in high school. And I just came to a point, man, where it was just like, my kids are the age they are now, and it was like, what do you prioritize? Do you prioritize being able to walk, when you're 45, 50 years old? And I just felt like I had put everything I had into it. So, it's always going to be a hard decision to walk away from something you've done your whole life, but I was ready. And I've had, a blast being able to kind of start new things and jump into new things, but also just spending time with my kids and being at stuff that I previously, wasn't able to be at.
Well, hey man, you had a hell of a fucking career, so congrats on that.
Man. Thank you.
So now to the why not me moments.
Yeah.
Because as you've already been pivoting away from the game and a lot of other stuff, obviously. And I'll get into your production company in a second and those aspirations, but why not Blake Griffin, the comedian? Talk to me about your stand-up. Talk to me about your roast. I have some questions about Nikki Glaser, but I'll ask you that off camera.
Yeah, man, I like grew up the one thing that my dad, not the one thing, but one of the many things my dad shared with me and that we both really love is comedy. And, as a kid, I would watch stand-up with him. We'd watch Saturday Night Live. We'd watch, whatever comedy show. I mean, I used to watch like Three Stooges with him, like going way back.
Oh, classic.
You know what I mean? Like that. Yeah. It was just like Three Stooges as a kid. I was like, whoa, this is funny. And like now I could watch it and it's like, it's a little bit different, right? Times have changed, but that's like what grew my love of comedy. And then as I got older, I started watching stuff on my own. I grew up in like that Comedy Central, like where that was like the channel I always watched. There was like stand-up specials, Chappelle Show. There was all that, right? Yeah. And it was always the thing that I gravitated to most. And whenever I watched stand-up, I was always like, man, I wonder if I could do that. It was like a challenge. And I like met some comedians early in my career here, and I would go to the Comedy Store. I would go to the Laugh Factory. I became close with a guy named Neil Brennan, who we both know, and he was kind of like my comedy mentor. He was like the guy who was like, dude, you have like these thoughts, like you're a funny person, like write them down. And so I started doing that, and now I have a notes folder that I've been writing stuff down for like 14, 15 years now.
Is there a one-man show coming? Are we going to tape it?
I don't know, man. There might be something. There might be something coming. But that's the beauty of it kind of being done now, is like you have a chance to sort of do that. Why not try this? The first time I ever did comedy, I remember I did 5 straight nights at Just for Laughs Comedy Festival in Montreal. Small show, but I hosted the show. I'd do like 10 minutes up top, and I walked away from that experience being like, oh, like I have a new tool in my tool belt. Like public speaking is nothing to me. Not nothing. It's always a thing, but like it just feels so much easier. And I remember that I think that was 2015 that I did that. And then after that, like every summer or every off season, I would always try to do something that just like scared me, that I felt like was outside of my comfort zone. Because every time you do that, it's just like you're just building as a person.
Another weapon in the belt, man. Another piece of the arsenal. So talk to me more about your production company. What made you launch it? Tell me the name, and just tell me some of the goals of the company.
Yeah, so I started this company, Mortal Media, with my partner, Ryan Khalil, who played in the NFL for 13 years. Was a USC guy, huge film and TV nerd, for lack of a better word. He loves it. Super smart guy. And I met him 2010 when I first moved out here through some mutual friends, and he had projects going. He would like intern at studios in his off season.
Oh, wow.
Like this is what he's always wanted to do. And, you know, I did like a Funny or Die internship during the lockout, which was really just me going on and making videos for like 3 weeks. But it was like the most fun thing for me ever.
Hysterical.
Just making the stupidest comedy shorts.
I miss Funny or Die, bro.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, that was at the time where they were just like cranking out video after video.
Yeah.
So I got to do that and I loved it. And what really sort of got me into this was like I would do commercials for different endorsement deals, and I only wanted to do funny, like comedy. I just asked if it could be funny, and most places love that. And I was able to do it. So, then I asked to like sit in as ad agencies were writing, and I worked with an ad agency called David and Goliath that did all the Kia commercials. And so I was able to go in and meet with them and sit with them and sort of help write a little bit. And then as I got older, I started just restructuring all my endorsement deals to be able to, write or produce or do whatever. So, and I enjoyed the process. Like I enjoyed the creative process of beginning to end, thinking of the idea, fleshing it out. I wasn't doing physical production, but, it was putting all those things together. And so Ryan and I decided to start this company in 2016, 17, really. Thomas Toll over at Legendary gave us kind of like a very loose first look deal. He gave us office space, and for the first 2 years, we decided like we weren't going to announce anything. There was going to be no PR thing. It was just, let's start this. Let's meet with as many people as we could get into a room with, and make sure people knew that this was like a passion project and not just like a vanity play.
For sure.
We didn't want to just slap our name on a sports documentary and be done. We wanted to like actually make film, TV, make art. And off of those 2 years, we developed enough relationships. 2023, which is crazy that it takes that long, but 2023, we had our first Apple TV show come out called Hello Tomorrow with Billy Crudup. And then we did a remake to White Men Can't Jump with Jack Harlow, Sinqua Wells.
That's my guy,
so early
Sinqua.
on, yeah, he's great.
He's the
great.
best.
And a good basketball player.
Can he, though?
He's like, yeah, dude, he played in college.
He did?
Yeah, he played in college. His basketball scenes were just like so easy because you just be like, hey, do this. And like, obviously like he doesn't still play all the time, but he's still got all, and it looked really natural. So he was great, man. He did a great job. Jack did a great job too, man. He put a lot of time in and worked on a lot of that. Because obviously as a basketball player, the basketball scenes were super important to me, and they're never going to be perfect because it's for film, right? So those two projects were there, and now we have a first look deal at Sony, and
offices on the lot, right?
Offices on the lot. And,
that's a producer's dream, to have an office on the lot, man.
It's great, man. I'll be there right after this, but it's great because it's just like it's another like mental challenge. That mental challenge of like going in every day to the office, being sharp in 4 or 5 meetings a day, making decisions. It was a different level of like mental exhaustion than I was used to. And it's a fun challenge, and I really love it. So we're just rolling now, and trying to keep it rolling now, and make some cool stuff.
Well, I got to tell you, we had a meeting with you guys a few weeks ago, and I've gotten to know you a little bit, obviously outside of work and being a basketball player, just on a human level. But seeing you in that environment and seeing you like kind of lead your team and talk intelligently about the product and what you guys are doing was really cool, because there's always going to be that, as you said earlier, that kind of like, are they just slapping their name or something? Are they really invested? Where more often than not, celebrities aren't that invested in their company. So for me, being a producer, it was really exciting to be across the table from you and hearing you actually speak with passion and knowledge about what you're doing. So as you continue to build your business, it's pretty evident to me that the sky is the limit, and you guys can have a lot more
I
success.
appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. And I'll honestly just, I'm having this conversation, but like it's the same for you. Like just our conversations since we've got to know each other are always super helpful. I'm a big believer in like you can learn. I learn more in just general meetings or just talking to people than I would if I picked up whatever book or try to do whatever on my own. So I appreciate your willingness to sort of share like how you get things done, and watching people lead their own companies is super powerful for me. So I appreciate that as well.
Well, thank you for that. So I'm going to ask you a few more questions, but they're random, fucking fun, like lighthearted questions. So and feel free to be like, I'm not going to talk about that, but this is what we've been doing. Which one's got to go? J. Cole, Drake, or Kendrick?
Oh man, this is tough, dude. I love Kendrick, man. I'm just like a big Kendrick fan. This is man.
Drake's in some shit right now, though. Maybe this is a good time to be like.
I will say I really appreciate the approach that Kendrick and J. Cole take when it comes to music and the art that they make. Drake puts out hits. Just hits. I'll have to go J. Cole. I'm gonna get roasted for anything I say, but I guess J. Cole. I mean, you got to have like Drake, the fun hits, and then Kendrick. I love Kendrick's music. So
I respect
that.
It
sucks. It sucks. I'm sorry, Jay.
I respect it. I respect it. What's the worst rumor that was ever spread about you?
Dude, one time, a long time ago. It's not the worst, but it was definitely the funniest. There was a crazy rumor on the internet a long time ago that I like Justin Bieber this was like when, he was like in a different time, but he like, it was in a coffee shop somewhere in LA. And there was a rumor that I like beat him up or something. Or I punched him or something because he was like giving somebody shit. And I got asked about it so many times. I mean, there's been millions of things that I've heard. It's like, where did you guys get that? Like, how'd that become a thing?
So
but that was like kind of funny when I talked to him about it a long time ago. But it was just like it was kind of a funny one, but it was also just kind of like, I hope people don't think I actually tried to beat up Justin Bieber at a
6'8" Blake beating the shot. That would be a pretty fucking lopsided fight. Who's your ultimate Hollywood crush?
Oh man. You know what? Dude, since I was a kid, it like I don't know if you remember the show Cousin Skeeter, but no. Megan it was like a Nickelodeon show. And Megan Good was on that show.
Oh, well. And
I was just like, since I was a kid, and then I got to meet her one time a long time ago, like she's married, all that, but like I just got to meet her one time.
Not
and I was
anymore.
like, man. Oh, I didn't know that. But I met her one time. I was like, man, I wish I could have been like, you have no idea. When I was a kid, I was like, that was it. That was it. Yeah.
She's pretty fly. At the end of your life, what would you like to see on your tombstone?
Oh man, for me, like I think I don't know if this is like the exact name. Like I think empathy is like a thing that people lack. I think it's a thing that people talk about. I think it's a thing that everyone should try to strive to have. But I think truly being empathetic, not sympathetic, but empathetic, like truly being able to put yourself in other people's shoes. I think as a leader, it's important to have empathy. I think just as a friend, as a parent, as a whoever, as a son, as a brother, whatever, I think empathy is super important because it means you really have taken the time to try to put yourself in their position and feel what they're feeling. And I think that if more people had empathy in this world today, I think we'd be a whole lot nicer to each other. And I see that from especially social media, like sometimes you'll know somebody, right? And you'll know what they're going through, and you'll know what they're up against. Or I've seen teammates try to battle through an injury and not be able to do it, but they played really hard and they tried to fight through it, which is what every fan should want the players of their team to do. And then you see them get killed for how they played. And that's a sports side, but it happens in every facet of life. I think if people are a little bit more empathetic, the internet might be a little bit of a nicer place. But also I think just like the world and how we treat other people, I think would be a better place. So I think empathetic would be like a word that I would love for people to describe me as.
So there's a quote from a book called To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee. You never truly understand a person until you walk around in their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So something to that effect could probably be a good line. Who's your favorite teammate that you've ever played with professionally?
Oh, man, a lot. I always say, DeAndre Jordan and I are super close still to this day, but Jamal Crawford is one of my favorite people. Obviously an unbelievable basketball player, but just like the nicest dude and hilarious. He speaks in like 70-year-old black man terms, where he's always got like a little saying where he's like, and he calls everybody fam. He's like, fam, joy wouldn't feel so good if it wasn't for pain. Or like he like has all those like sayings. And he's just hilarious. But dude, over the years, I've had so many favorite teammates. It's
but one guy, Blake.
All right. I mean, I'll go Jamal.
Jamal?
Yeah, okay. Jamal Crawford. Great guy. And he's doing TV, he's doing analyst stuff now. He's so much fun to listen to. Just like his passion for the game is great.
Yeah, he's awesome. If you could be alive in any time period and be any age in that time period, what do you think it would be?
Being mixed race kind of limits your time frame.
My brother.
My man. It kind of limits your ability to you don't know how you'd come out on the other side.
I want to be 15 in the 40s.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
No, definitely not.
No.
There's always something like growing up in Oklahoma, like I would always watch Westerns. One of my favorite movies that I've, I don't know, like critically, like how people feel about it, but The Harder They Fall on Netflix with Idris Elba, Lakeith Stanfield, I think
Regina King. Yeah, James Samuel directed that film. Yeah.
I loved Westerns growing up, and like then to watch a Western where it was like a mostly black cast was just like something I was just like, that's awesome. So I think I would go like Wild West, forgetting everything outside. I don't know, something about the Wild West I just love.
I love it. All right, last one. What's the best pickup line you've ever used that's worked? You're loving these questions, aren't you?
Man, I don't know. I'm not much of a pickup line guy.
Okay, we can flip it. What's the best pickup line that ever worked on you, right? Because you're a pro athlete, you're famous. Girls throw themselves at guys like you, right? So what's the one thing that a girl did that impressed you, that a stranger did that impressed you, that broke through?
I thought I'll say like a funny DM that I got a long time ago. This girl I think I've seen it used other times now, but it was the first time I'd ever seen it. And this girl had like sent a dog, like a little dog emoji. And then like the next message was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. He always runs off. I'll get him out of here or something. But hey, what's your name? I can't remember the exact line, but I was like, that was pretty creative. Like
pretty clever.
Yeah.
If I wasn't married, I'd use it tomorrow.
Yeah. It's a good
awesome.
one.
My guy, man. Thank you. This was fun, man. I really appreciate your time. And, I'm excited to keep getting to know you better and see your ascension in the world of entertainment continue to grow. And I appreciate your time. And thank you again for being a guest on Why Not Me.
Couldn't have said any better, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate the time. Always fun to link up with you. So thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.